peel all of the tape off and see how my paint job turned out. If it turned out good or horrible. We'll see here. Well, this is it. This is the paint job that it's of the Marx New Haven locomotive. Welcome to another episode of My Grandpa's Train. In this episode, I'm featuring my freshly repainted Marx New Haven locomotive, minus the lettering, and a donated powertrain and chassis from Classic Model Trains. Together, I have, between these parts, been able to recreate the locomotive that I had as a child way back in the 1990s. I managed to delete all of the footage of me working on this locomotive. So here I go again. I'm just going to explain what I did. I'll pop the shell off this so you can see what's inside. And see, this is held on with 3 plastic clips per side. That came off actually fairly easily. This is the Marx motor drivetrain, and it has been completely reassembled from the ground up. And let me just show you some of the things that I did to it. So the best way to show you this is to take everything all apart, but I'm not going to do that. So I will just try to explain how I was able to get this back to life again. So now the only pieces that I had from the original was the shell and the drive shaft. I actually found this motor in a junk box, and I cleaned it up by itself, and the motor actually ran. It had this unusual bracket on it, and at the time I didn't actually know what it went to. Plus it had the gear, and come to find out, this motor was for a Marx locomotive. A lot of plastic parts used in these engines, plastic worm gears, and then there is a plastic tubular drive shaft that's solid that goes all the way through, and it's held in on each end with plastic clips. And then the truck assembly comes apart. The only way to get these apart is they're supposed to have small metal tabs that stick through, and I can show you on this spare one. You can see the 4 slots on the bottom of this where the brass tabs would slot through, and the brass assembly actually sandwiches the entire truck assembly to the weight or to the motor. Now, unfortunately, the tabs on this end truck, all 4 of them broke off. So the only way that I was able to salvage this truck is that I used super glue and glued the assembly together. And so far it has held up just fine. Now the truck with the motor, I was able to slot the tabs in place. Now actually how I got the motor in, there's 3 pieces here. There's the brass truck frame, there's a brass U-bracket that goes around the motor, and then up on the top there's these 2 little tabs. These tabs, if you bend them up, the motor will actually slide out of its separate brass frame. Once the motor's out of that frame, you can actually then slide the metal tabs into the U-bracket and then get them bent into place. Now, the tricky part comes when you put the motor back together, because this, when you pull it out, it will bend this back bracket out. So you'll have to slide it in. It hooks in the middle here, and then you'll have to slide it back down. Now you'll have to apply pressure on the top of the motor and then use a pliers or something to bend these brass tabs back in place. Now it's important that you apply pressure, because if you don't apply enough pressure, the drive gears will not mesh and then the motor will just spin. One particular thing about this motor is I actually remanufactured the brush plate, because the original one was a little bit brittle and I accidentally snapped it off. So I rebuilt this one completely out of another piece of plastic that I had lying around, and so far it seems to be holding up just fine. I also added this extra weight, and the problem that I noticed when testing this on the tracks I actually first tested it without any weights, not even on the front truck. And what happened was there wasn't enough contact pressure on the two front wheels to the rail. And so instead of moving down the track, it would just spark because there wasn't enough contact pressure. And eventually it carboned up the entire wheels on there, and I had to completely redo my cleaning process on the front wheels. So then I put the front weight on and it helped. Then I decided to add this extra chunk of weight in the middle, and that gives this engine a nice bit of weight. And then because these are all plastic, I actually did not use any kind of grease. Certain types of grease can actually eat into plastic unless it is specifically made for plastic compatibility. So I ended up using just the Labelle 102 plastic compatible gear lubricant. And this works just fine. After that, I will take this over to the layout and I'll run it around a few laps just so you can see it run. I will then pull some Marx cars that I have acquired, as well as I'm going to recreate the train that this pulled way back in 1998.